Imagine this. You backpack a painstaking 15 miles up and over a pass. Finally, you get your camp set up, eat some food, and lay down for the night. But you toss and turn all night long. We've all been there. Getting a good night's rest while backpacking can be hard to come by, but it doesn't have to be. So today, I brought together a list of 5 tips to help you sleep better while backpacking. I think the most important piece of gear for sleeping comfortably is your sleeping pad. This keeps you off the ground, keeping you warm, and supports you while you sleep. If there's one area that you want to improve on with your sleeping system, start with your sleeping pad. So tip number 1 is to find the right sleeping pad for you. This sleeping pad right here is what I start out on. It's just one of those like $30 Amazon sleeping pads. While it's very compact and lightweight, I do not know the R value and it's not comfortable at all. So I do not suggest these sleeping pads unless you are a poor college student like I was when I first started backpacking. So first off, find a sleeping pad with a good R value that is ASTM rated. If you aren't familiar, R value is basically how warm your sleeping pad is. It's typically on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the coldest and 5 being super warm. And you want to check for that ASTM rating because that is the standard for third-party testing, meaning that someone who is not the company has given that pad that R value. As for what you should look for, I suggest a sleeping pad with an R value of at least 3 for warmer months like the summer or late spring. If you're going to be going backpacking in colder months like the fall or maybe even winter, I suggest a sleeping pad with at least an R value of 4. For example, my Big Agnes Insulated Aircore Ultra has an R value of 4.5, so it's great for late fall trips and even when it gets to be below freezing temperatures. When you start looking at pads, you'll notice that they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. There are rectangular pads, tapered pads, 3/4 lengths pads, wide pads, short pads, and everything else in between. But I'm a fan of the wider pads, the ones that are 25 inches wide. The thinner pads just leave more of a chance to roll off the pad and have your arms slide off. With a wider pad, your arms won't roll off the side and it'll make for a much better night's rest. You have more room to move around, your arms won't fall off the sides, and you can move your legs around a lot more. The small increase in weight is definitely worth it. As for a length, I suggest something that's basically just as long as you are tall. So for example, I'm 5 foot 10 inches tall or 70 inches, so the pad that I use is 72 inches long, just longer than I am tall. And as for a couple things that you should just avoid in general, avoid getting those pads that have a foot pump built in and also built-in pillows. These are just gimmicks and things you don't really need and are just increased weight. Tip number 2, and I promise that this is going to make a world of a difference, try using an actual backpacking pillow. For so many trips, I would just use a stuff sack with my extra clothes in it for a pillow. This method seems to work at first. They start off sort of fluffy and debatably comfortable, but pretty quickly they just get lumpy, flat, and uncomfortable. And using a real backpacking pillow was a huge factor into me getting much better sleep in the backcountry. There's loads of different pillows on the market now that are lightweight and compressed down. Pillows like the Sea to Summit Aeros and the Nemo Philo pillow, which is kind of fun to say. I like this Kilo Skier pillow. It's an inflatable pillow that has a soft material on the outside and is slightly cushioned. It's pretty lightweight and compact, and it costs like 40 bucks, which isn't too bad for a vast increase in your sleep quality. Granted, this is the only backpacking pillow that I've actually used, but the fact that this one pillow got me to sleep that much better while backpacking is the reason that getting a pillow is on this list. I think a lot of backpackers put aside or don't bring a pillow because it's not one of the typical checklist items. But in reality, when you're home, you use a pillow every single night. And I guarantee if tonight, when you're at home sleeping, if you just didn't sleep with a pillow, you would probably sleep like crap. Sure, a pillow will take up more room in your pack and it's gonna add a little bit more weight, but getting a better night's rest and having more energy on day 2, 3, 4, and so on makes a world of a difference while backpacking. So in summary, try a pillow on your next backpacking trip. It might just make a world of a difference while sleeping. Tip number 3 is to find a sleeping bag or a quilt that works best for you. And this might take a bit of testing, but I'll help you try to get on the right track of what you might be interested in. As for myself, I move around a lot in my sleep and typically sleep with one leg bent. So with that in mind, I don't sleep very well in mummy-shaped sleeping bags. Mummy bags don't really let me keep that one leg bent because that tapered shape isn't wide enough. So I try to use a rectangular sleeping bag or opt for a quilt because of this reason. I personally use the Enlightened Equipment Enigma, which is a quilt, and the design of quilts let you spread out just a bit more. Quilts are almost like an oval shape, but they act more like a blanket so you can spread out more. Justin Outdoors put it a great way in that quilts are just upgraded blankets. You get the freedom and unrestricted movement of a blanket, but with all the upgraded features to stay warm. For yourself, if you don't move around much and keep your legs in the same position, then a mummy bag might work well for you. But if you move around a lot more like I do and keep your legs in different positions, then a rectangular sleeping bag or a quilt might be a better option. I'm also just a fan of quilts. I started using one like maybe a couple years ago, and they're so awesome, they're so much better, I love them. And keep in mind the temperature rating. I've been on trips where I've used a 40-degree sleeping bag when it got down to 28 degrees at night. Needless to say, I did not sleep very well, and it could have been a very dangerous situation. You should be using a sleeping bag that is rated to at least 20 degrees lower than the temperature that you're going to be sleeping in. So for example, if it's going to be 40 degrees at night, you should be using a 20-degree sleeping bag. And this is because most sleeping bags are rated to their absolute limit. A 40-degree sleeping bag will not work in 30-degree temperatures. So get a bag that's rated to about 20 degrees lower than the temperatures that you're going to be sleeping in. And if you aren't really sure what a good temperature rating for you would be, typically 30 degrees is a good starting point. 30 degrees gets you backpacking into the early fall and isn't too warm for the summer. But this is obviously going to depend on the climate that you're in. Anyway, to sum up tip number 3, find a sleeping bag or a quilt that is the right shape for you and also the right temperature rating. As for tip number 4, find a good level area to set up your camp. There's been a handful of nights where I'm camping and I didn't notice that my tent was on a bit of a decline. Throughout the night, I just kept sliding downhill and I could feel the blood rushing to my head, and I did not sleep very well at all. Especially with the materials that our backpacking gear is made out of, a lot of the stuff is pretty slippery. So really check the area that you're setting up your tent in. Try to find the most level surface for sleeping because it will make a big difference in your sleep throughout the night. If you can't really do anything about it and have to set up on a little bit of a decline, like 1 to 2 degrees, just make sure that your head is pointed uphill. And as for a little bonus tip, if you want to go above and beyond, and this is something that I do not do, but your smartphone probably has a built-in level app. Like on my iPhone, I can just open up the Measure app and use this to see how level the ground is. You don't have to do this, you should be able to eyeball it, but it is kind of a fun party trick. Anyway, tip number 4, find level ground to set up your tent. And as for the last tip, before bed, go pee. Even if you don't have to, go pee before going to bed. The worst thing is having to pee in the middle of the night. And I know that everyone watching this video, either at home or while camping, has had to pee in the middle of the night, and you lay there wide awake thinking that you're gonna be able to fall back asleep and that the feeling's gonna go away, but it never will. Trying to resist it means you're only going to lay there awake longer. So to prevent this as much as possible, first off, don't drink a ton of water leading up to going to sleep, but also pee before going to lay down for the night. And if you do end up having to pee in the night, just get up and do it and get it over with. I know it sucks, it's cold, it's outside the tent, it's dark, you don't want to get up. I've been there. But just do it right away and get it over with. That way you can get back in bed and get back to sleep and get more rest. So in summary, with the final tip, go pee before going to bed. All of these tips are obviously a bit subjective while you're sleeping in the backcountry, but sleeping is super important while backpacking. Getting a good night's rest while out on the trail is going to make your trip so much more enjoyable. You'll have the energy to pack up your campsite in the morning and get started on that next 12 miles. You won't be as miserable carrying your pack, and you'll probably enjoy the day much more. So try out some of the tips that I mentioned in this video and you might just sleep a heck of a lot better because of it. If you guys have any questions for me, please leave them down in the comment section down below and I'll try to answer everything the best that I can. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in my next video.